Hello, I'm Lesley Pyne, and today I'm really excited to talk to my friend and novelist, Cali Bird. I met Cali several years ago, and her story's on my blog and in my book. She writes some blogs about the importance of creativity, and we share a love of Liz Gilbert. We feel we can call her Liz now because we know her that well.
She's one of us.
And we've attended a couple of events together. Today we're talking about her new novel, Tales of the Countess, published recently, after she started writing it 20 years ago. And I just say before we start that I've read it and I absolutely love it. So, welcome, Cali. I'm really pleased to talk to you. So please tell us more about Tales of the Countess.
So, shall I grab my copy? Because it's lovely to stroke it after such a long writing project. So Tales of the Countess, I started writing this 20 years ago. At the time, I was single. I was the archetypal sort of career girl, Bridget Jones lifestyle, living in central London. Actually, before I started writing it, I was working in investment banking, early 30s, useless at getting men, attracted to the wrong types, the odd disastrous short relationship here and there. And as I went into my 30s, quite in pain about that, and I talked about that on your blog because that had implications. I never got to have kids because there was no one to have it with. And around the same time, I guess it put me on a personal development journey. And one of the suggestions on that was to start to write. And after a few months of doing Julia Cameron exercises, I'm sure you're familiar with The Artist's Way, and another book called The Right to Write, which is excellent if anybody wants to get into writing. Then I sort of felt the story coming together. I used to lark around as a made-up title of Countess Cali of Kennington, which will probably have to be a story for another blog. So I realised as I was doing these writing exercises, and the other thing is I had loads of handbags that I loved and they all had names. So I realised through these writing exercises that there was a story in this alter ego about this countess and her bags and how she couldn't get the man she wanted, really. And it took off from a real part in my life, but then obviously it became its own story as well.
So how did that writing help you once you started?
I think, to start with, it does let you channel. I mean, it wasn't just writing the book. I was doing a lot of journaling at the time, very much following what Julia Cameron suggests in morning pages, sort of 3 pages of longhand, sort of free writing. And that really helped sort out. I was sort of going into a depression from being single and the implications of that, and watching everyone else pair up around me. And for whatever reason, it just not working out for me, which is, you can't fathom out why. You think, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? I don't seem to have the relationship gene. The writing, sort of journaling type writing helped a lot. And then, it was exciting to be working on this book. And I think when I started writing, it did settle me in terms of I became gradually more grounded in myself. And then, I had this project which was just really exciting. And and I'm like, I'm writing a novel. And you're quite naive when you first start writing, because it's, many years later, I realized this is what actually it takes to write a novel. But you have sort of innocent bravado when you first start. And it was because whilst it was fiction, it was also my story in it. So I suppose it allowed me to get the story out and also choose a better ending than I had for myself. Because even a year or so before I started writing, I thought, and I was trying to get over some bloke, just one of those, some bloke that I hadn't worked out with. And I did think at the time, I could write this as a love story and choose the ending that I want, because it's not working out in real life. But if I wrote this down, I could choose a better ending. So, all of that, really.
I think that for me, when I was reading it, I could hear you, having knowing you, although not for 20 years, but it was you that I was seeing and hearing all the way through. And I think I've heard Liz say every fiction is actually an autobiography. And as you say, it gets you to have that ending, not without giving anything away, because there's going to be 2 more books, aren't there?
And there's some ups and downs in it.
I thought the same. Also, you talked when we had a conversation before this, you talked about karma to mission, and that sort of you can talk about it, more about it than me.
Yeah, let me explain that. So karma to mission. So just as background, I've been practicing Buddhism for over 30 years. So I have a daily practice where I chant every day. And this karma to mission is one of those concepts. So it means we've all got something that is difficult in our lives. For some people, you know, it might be health or money, or they just can't get the right job. For me, it was relationships. I know much of your community, you know, it's around, for whatever reason, around childlessness, for whatever reason, you know, that's occurring. So most of us have got some humdinger in our lives that causes us pain. Okay, and that's the thing. Yeah, we've all got a humdinger, right? Even the happiest of people have got a humdinger tucked away somewhere. And that's often what causes us. For me, it was my Buddhist practice, but also seeking personal development journey. So yeah, it will seek you to find answers, and there'll be many times. So karma is a Buddhist word for accumulation of cause and effect. So we come into the world with our bag of stuff, good stuff, you know, there's lots of great karma that we have, and tricky stuff that makes us suffer. And so what our Buddhist practice says, it says that actually that most difficult stuff, over time, yes, you can change that, and it will become your greatest treasure.
Yes.
And it becomes this mission. And certainly, Lesley, you are an example of that, in terms of, you know, you've taken your journey around not being able to have children and all the pain and grief of that, and you've turned it around, and you've created this amazing community. And, you know, and I read your book, and I can see your journey, and even in writing that book, there was more and more of this journey, and you've created value with it. And you've also healed yourself. You found joy where there was suffering. So for me, because my story, you know, if you'd have met me 20, 25 years ago, my story was being single, not being able to settle down, in my 30s, biological clock ticking ever louder. And people used to say to me, both in our Buddhist movement and also, you know, in personal development talks and stuff, that, you know, one day you'll solve this and people will come to you for advice on it. And when you're in the thick of something really painful, you just can't see it. You can't see how it's ever going to change. Yeah. And you certainly can't see that you're going to have answers for other people, because you just have no answers for yourself, and you're buried in pain, and that can be months or years. So and also, you know, there's two things can happen, I found, and witnessing people in my Buddhist practice, and again in, you know, in the wider spiritual, personal development, creative world that we both hang out in. Either you get what it is you really, really wanted, or you no longer suffer because you haven't got it. Okay. So I am married now. I got married at the tender age of 46, but I never got to have kids, and I don't suffer about that anymore. I'm, you know, somewhere along the line, that just joy turned into joy at what I have. So this karma to mission, you know, this book sort of came out of that as well, because I took my bag of nasty, horrible, painful stuff and sort of did something with it. And I've written the story, and whilst it's, I mean, the story is a bit sort of off the wall. It involves handbags that talk. So think Sex and the City meets Toy Story. But underneath that, there is a lesson of you have to be happy in yourself, then you get your man. Exactly. You know, and that sort of acceptance of self, which again we've talked about in the past. And also alongside that, because alongside that journey of writing, creative stuff, I was going to everyone else's personal development seminars. And alongside that, I thought, you know what, that's what I'd love to be doing. I'd love to be coaching. I'd love to be being able to speak in an encouraging way to other people. So again, over the years, I've been able to do that. So this whole pain at being single, it just opened up this other world that I was able to navigate through. Gradually, you know, do the changes I needed to make, heal my pain, get some of what I wanted over time. Yay! You know? And also gradually be content and accepting with what I didn't have, and it was no longer a problem to me. So I think, yeah, so our pain, and you know, and somebody might be watching this video now and thinking, oh, I can never imagine that, but definitely, and I know that you can say the same, Lesley. Over time and doing the work, and it isn't easy, and you have lots of false starts, and you think you're there, and then something else happens and you're back to where you thought you were, but you're not, but it feels like that. But over time, definitely you can, we say in Buddhism, we can transform things. So the writing, journaling, and what I needed to learn, even as a novelist, just led me to amazing places that have become my greatest treasure.
That's really lovely, isn't it? I mean, you can see that in you having read Tales of the Countess. It's that is a different person who the character is different from how you are now. And I think having read been through some of that myself, Sheryl Sandberg calls it, other people call it post-traumatic growth, similar sort of thing.
Oh, lovely term. Yeah, exactly.
So it's like bounce forward from whatever you've had, but it is taking that. I can't remember the word you use now, but the greatest crap that we've been through and turning it into our greatest treasure. And creativity has been huge for you, hasn't it? I mean, writing's the one thing that, I mean, I didn't prepare this, but do you do other things that are creative other than writing? Is that your main?
Writing is my main thing now. You probably can't see, but I'm actually sitting in front of a grand piano, which I haven't played in years because writing became my sort of dedicated, disciplined thing. Actually, prior to writing, I actually playing piano, and I did grade 8 many years ago, so I'm sort of post grade 8 standard when I'm practiced up, but I haven't practiced for years because writing took over in sort of my disciplined daily practice. But yeah, that used to help channel that pain. And also in the past I've done jigsaws, tapestry type stuff. So I think creative stuff, whatever it is, gardening as well, is also very healing. It's a way of giving you focus. You're generally sort of creating something beautiful bit by bit. And taking your mind away. And so you can come back with renewed, refreshed perspective, I guess. But for me, it is writing is my main thing these days.
I mean, I think when we're recording this in the middle of just coming out of lockdown, and people have perhaps some people have got some more time on their hands. I mean, for me, writing was huge, and a bit less so these days. But I've embroidery is what I'm doing now, and I really love that. And I think I think it's Brené Brown who says that healing goes from your head to your heart via your hands, and I think that channeling, that healing, whatever pain through our hands in some way or other is really helpful. But I'm just moving on a little bit. I mean, most of the book you wrote 20 years ago or thereabouts. So how did it feel to go back to it? I mean, I guess in many ways you were going back to your younger self, weren't you?
Yeah. So the journey of the book was I started writing it in 2000. And I say I had immense naive bravado that, yes, I could write a novel, that's fine. Several drafts and a few years into it, you kind of realize what you don't know, what I didn't know about novel writing. And then it's like, oh, there is an art to creating a story that works for the readers, and I don't have it. So I wrote it over several years in the 2000s, in the early noughties. And it was 2005 actually when I met Graham, who's now my husband. But I got to about 2008, having done several drafts, and it had moved away from fiction. It had moved away from being more rooted in my life, and the Countess was her own character, and it had its own story. And then, I kind of ran out of steam with it then, and I actually parked it then. So in 2008, I'm like, I can't take this any further at the moment. And I think because my own life had changed, because I wasn't in that single pain, so perhaps some of the motivation had gone through it, but I always knew I'd come back to it. I knew there'd be a time, because I loved the story and I always believed in it, and I knew there'd be a time I'd come back to it. So it was actually late 2016 when I proverbially sort of felt the Countess twitch in the drawer. Like writers always have a thing, they've got all writers have got a manuscript in the drawer that they've abandoned. And then actually, so come back to it then was fantastic, because it was quite an advantage, because I was less emotionally attached to the story. Because I think earlier on, especially when I was still single, it's like, this is my story. You can't critique it. You can't tell me what it needs to do, because I think it was too personal. And there are things that make stories work for films, for novels, for TV shows. There are techniques, and if you do them, they work for the person who's watching or reading the story, and they make it work in it as an entity in itself. So the great thing about coming back to it was, I probably had less of that painful emotional attachment to it, and I could look at it with a bit more detachment and go, right, what do we need to do to make this work? So that was fantastic. And I had two versions of it, one which I didn't like, one which I did like. The one I didn't like was a later draft. That's the one I abandoned it on in 2008 and thought, I'm stuck. And I sort of wrote myself into a bit of cul-de-sac with it. But then, yeah, I was able then to read these 2 drafts and realize that there were many merits in the draft I didn't like. And actually the answer lay between these 2 drafts. And that's then what I set about doing over the course of a year. And then I got feedback. And by now, yeah, I think I'd matured as a writer. I'd learned a lot more about creativity, been to a couple of Liz Gilbert talks, and she's fantastic at writing about creativity. And many other things. So then I was able to get critique on it and get feedback and be more detached in terms of what is going to be good for this project, not so much about my heart anymore, because I felt I was more detached from it. But what will make it work so I can get it out there.
Yeah, because it is that, you know, when people criticize your writing, it's like it's very personal, isn't it? It's I can imagine being, you know, if I was to go back and over my book now and get a different editor, I think I'd be it'd be easier to have it edited now than it would have been, because I mean, as you say, for you it's like, you know, they'd be criticizing your story, I think, wouldn't they? I think because you said at one point there was the editor wanted you to water down the Countess's anger, and how did that feel when someone was taking what was so personal, but also a fundamental bit of the story, I think, her anger.
Yeah. So I went back to the story end of 2016 to 2017, had beta readers, and last summer I was ready now, and I decided how I was going to publish, and so I hired a professional editor. And I was more nervous about talking handbags and the swear words they sometimes said, and whether she would come back and say, no, you just can't do that. And actually she never mentioned that. That was great. But she picked up that the Countess, the character in the book, had some narcissistic elements, and perhaps her anger was a bit too aggressive. And that certainly wasn't my intention. But when you're in your own work, you can't see it. So it was one of those things. So I got her comments back, and you know, and I was really nervous about it. And it's very hard to read that, but you also know, like, oh, I kind of see what she means now she said it. But also, the Countess in the book is very spirited. She's a very capable woman, you know, and she does like to drink and swear a bit, you know. So I didn't want to take that spirit away from her, because I really felt that was part of her. And so I had this. But anyway, so the editor the manuscript was in Word. The editor has their comments all the way through, and you just kind of work through and see which ones you're going to do and which you're not. So it was a case of walking a tightrope to fix what she said was wrong with it, and I could see what she meant, but keep the essence of my character. And I realized that sort of the anger that the Countess character was displaying was her emotional pain. It was this pain that I felt way back then of being single. And I don't know, you know, in your sort of worst moments, sometimes it's a physical pain and you kind of feel it sort of in your breastbone, don't you? Exactly. And you sort of curl over with it. And there was this interesting experience. There was one bit I was about to change, and I didn't really want to, but I thought, well, our editor knows best, and I went to change it. And then it's like this vision. It sounds very woo-woo, but I could have imagined my Countess character in a glass box, sort of a bit of a big brother, sort of, you know, sort of banging on the glass, going, don't you take my pain away, you know.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was really fantastic. And then I sort of started journaling with her, and just sort of started making notes and journaling with her, and basically she needed me. She knew that I knew her pain, and I was the best person to convey this. And no one else could tell her story. It was my job to do that, and she needed me to do that. And so that then helped, because then whenever I was stuck with something, shall I do this or shall I do that? And it was tough working that tightrope of what feedback to take on board and what not to, because you don't know if you're doing it right or not, you know, and you don't know if you're going to break it, you know. Exactly. That was one of my fears. I'm going to break it. Well, the worst case scenario is I'll just roll back to the previous draft and have another go, but that's, you know, that's another few months work. So yeah, whenever I was in a dilemma, then I did used to journal with her and say, should we do this or should we do that? And some things I'm sure, you know, and again, there's lots of journaling techniques where you journal with your inner wisdom, or with Elizabeth Gilbert, we've done exercises where you end up journaling with your divinity, your higher self. So I suppose she
Also
was
your
sort of
younger
tapping into something
self.
like that. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So yeah, I would basically, whenever there was a decision to be made and I couldn't figure out myself, I would just ask her, and on paper, or either type in or handwritten, and she'd say, yeah, do that. No, don't worry about that. There was one thing, she goes, no, the cost of doing that won't give you the benefit. Don't worry about it. Because she's very sappy, this Countess in the book. You know, she's very business minded. So yeah, but it was that trust that, yeah, I guess she embodied my earlier pain. And she trusted me to get that out. And interestingly, then so I got this done, and then the book went back to the same editor for proofreading, and it was such a relief because I didn't know, you know, whether I'd done it right or not. But actually, she gave me great feedback, saying there was a couple of scenes she really didn't like, and she says, you've done a great job on fixing these, and I can really see this. So it was lovely. It was getting a gold star. It was like getting a gold star from a teacher, you know. And yeah, and now people are reading the book, and you know, it's lovely having your feedback, because you never know with something creative whether it's okay or not. And there comes a point you have to just let it go.
Exactly.
You know, this book is out there now. Whatever you think of it, some people, I know it's a Marmite book. Some people don't like it. You know, Talking Handbags doesn't do it for some people, and other people are like, yeah, that's great. You know, let me have a read.
Just to head back slightly, just thinking about that, what you were just saying, it's like if we could just turn that into a tip for people to, it's
sure.
Like journaling, it's like writing, as you said, we've done that with Liz Gilbert, haven't we? She suggests, you know, if you've got an issue, if you've got fear or anger, write from that. Is that, I mean, I think you do that really well with all the different accessories. They all play a part, don't they? You know,
well, that's interesting, yeah, because I don't see that. Because to me, they're real. But it's interesting that you see that as an onlooker. But yeah, in terms of, so you know, Leslie and I are sitting here. We're talking about writing books. You don't have to write a book to get through your pain. Let's just say that to start with. Okay, that is not the way out of your pain. But definitely seeking. You know, there will be a time when you can create value with it. Whether that might be just listening and helping someone else in your situation, or getting through it and then having that sense of confidence that you can do something else. And again, I've read your book and the case studies, Leslie, and you and the other ladies in it, you know, have got to that point. But it's specifically for if you're in pain with something, then just write. First of all, no one has to see this. Okay, it's not writing that you're going to show anyone else. It doesn't matter if you're good at spelling or grammar, whether you have nice handwriting or atrocious handwriting like mine. But you can have a Q&A, you can have a question and answer. If you imagine, there's a couple of ways you can do it. One is you can, I mean, I've done this with back pain sometimes, just write to that problem. Imagine you're having a dialogue with that problem. You can give it a name. You know, Julia Cameron's inner critic, I think it's called Nigel. Oh, it's just Nigel getting uppity again, you know. So one way is to have dialogue with that pain. And you can personify if you want to, but there's no hard and fast rules. It will come to you how you want to do it. And the other way, which and you will end up doing a combination of both, is thinking about your inner wisdom, or it might be your older self, or you know, in 30 years' time, what advice would you give yourself if you imagine yourself as a wise grandmother or something. And we have that wisdom in us, and if we can just be still and you have a nice coffee, a piece of cake or something, and just sit and write, you'll be surprised what your life can tell you, what you need to know. And you can have a dialogue with the pain, you can have a dialogue with your inner wisdom. There's a Liz Gilbert exercise we did where you work through fear, enchantment, permission, persistence, trust, and then to divinity. And I call that exercise the selves. It's the chapters in Liz Gilbert's book Big Magic, and you write a letter from each of those sides of yourself to yourself. And I do that quite frequently, when I even all the time, whenever I'm at a crossroads or I'm stuck or I'm fearful of the next step, then I do that, because your life knows what you need. You'll be surprised at how wise you can be, and you can tap that. And then it just makes you feel a bit better for the next day or the next week or the next month, and then you just do it again when you need it.
Exactly. I think that's a fabulous sort of ending, a really positive way to end. And yeah, so anything else? I mean, I think other than sitting here waving this, and the link will be available. Is anything else that you'd like to add? I mean, I know we've had pictures of you looking really excited, sort of holding something else.
Hold it up, looking sensible.
I don't have to do that. No, we don't have to do it.
No, I just really want to say that whatever pain you're in, there's definitely a way out of it. You will come through it in time, and you can probably create value with that pain for yourself and for others. Just know that you can come out the other side of it, exactly. and you will find the right help to do that. Just trust that.
Just that. Thank you. That's been really, really fabulous. And I'm just going to finish holding it because it's really nice. Actually, it feels really nice inside as well.
So, yeah, I'm pleased with it.
Go and buy it. I would say it's really, and especially I think at the moment in the summer, and where we are in the world at the minute, it's a great it's a great read. So yeah, thank you for your time, Kelly. And yeah, we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye, Lesley.
Bye.
See you.